I think you want me off, but hey, Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are. I have sunshine coming through my window from the US, New York City. This is a great day for me and for all of us. But what gives me great pleasure right now, because I want to make sure we have, most of everything that's going on here today. I'm Sheila Katzman. My pronouns are she, her. I'm on the land of the Lenape people, AKA Brooklyn, New York. I'm moderating. At this moment, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the International Association of Women in Radio and Television world president, Ms. Violet Ganda. She's an award-winning journalist. She was born in Mutare, Zimbabwe. Ganda holds journalism qualifications from Zimbabwe and a master's degree in international journalism from the City University in the UK. In 2002, Ganda co-founded Southwest Radio Africa, which developed alternative ways to circumvent state censorship in her country, Zimbabwe, while reporting from London. She was forced into exile for 20 years and was only able to return home following the fall of President Mugabe, Robert Mugabe, to report on political developments there. What a way to return. While there, she hosted presidential and parliamentary election debates and co-produced an investigative documentary entitled Ballots, Then Bullets, which explored election irregularities and electoral violence. In 2017, she was elected as president of the International Association of Women in Radio and Television, the oldest global organization representing broadcasters. I think that Violet, there's so much to her that it will take pages and pages. And so, Violet, I'm going to welcome you right now. And I'm really happy to be here with you, to share space with you right now. And she's going to hand over, throw the ball to you, Violet.
Thank you very much, Sheila, and I'm very happy to share this space with you also. And thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. On behalf of the International Association of Women in Radio and TV, or IAWRT, and our partners at the Oslo Mets University Journalism and Media International Center, or JMIC, and in collaboration with UNESCO, I welcome you all to our World Press Freedom Day special event titled My Climate Change Story, the Democratization of Climate News. I am having feedback. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm having problems. Okay.
Technology.
Apologies for that. I'm happy to announce that this is only the beginning of our efforts together, and we will continue to discuss future cooperation about climate change with the JMIC and also with UNESCO. The 39th IAWRT Biennial Conference in November will be held in Tanzania, and the theme focuses on the global crisis of COVID, conflict, and also climate change, and how these three C's are impacting women across the world. Building a body of action-oriented knowledge around these urgent areas will be at the core of the event, where senior women journalists, researchers, activists, and filmmakers from all continents, from all over the world, will share experiences and build the way forward. On climate change, direct observations made on and above Earth's surface show that the planet's climate is significantly changing, and human activities are the primary driver of these changes. The current warming trend is of particular significance because it is unequivocally the result of human activity since the mid-20th century and proceeding at a rate that is unprecedented over millennia. It is undeniable that human activities have warmed the atmosphere, the ocean and land, and that widespread and rapid changes in the atmosphere and biosphere have occurred. The evidence for rapid climate change is compelling. We've seen global temperature rise, warming oceans, shrinking ice sheets, decreased snow cover, sea level rising, and extreme events. So scientific evidence for warming of the climate system is unequivocal. And that is why today we have a diverse panel on climate change. Our esteemed speakers' background on media and climate change, hydro systems, agriculture and food security, digital media, environmental journalism will be relevant to fuel the discussion on the democratization of climate news. I believe that press freedom is also an essential driver to address the dissemination of the climate change news, but globally, journalists are facing a multitude of challenges, including increasing threats and obstacles to investigating environmental conditions. The World Press Freedom Index and the Environment Performance Index have over the years predicted that there is a significant relationship between the degree of press freedom in a country and the level of environmental performance. And we see countries with poor press freedoms tending to score low on environmental performance index. Climate change or climate is changing, and journalists should be allowed to access and provide the right information to the public. The climate emergency has also resulted in the breeding ground for disinformation. So how can we capacitate and enrich women journalists to be, in particular, to be able to perform the critical function of providing more environmental coverage, or for government, civil society, corporations, so that we have to take responsibility and take action. As truth seekers, journalists are particularly vulnerable in conflicts, and women journalists even more so. Last year, IAWRT took a huge step in this field by creating a digital safe house, or DSH, for women journalists in the Philippines, a program that we took to expand to other countries, or we are planning to expand to other countries such as Afghanistan and the Eastern European Partnership, mainly in Ukraine and Moldova. While the pandemic itself has hit women unproportionately hard, in countries like Turkey and Pakistan, the pandemic has also been used as a tool to target and impede women journalists. So there's the C, the conflict, the COVID, and gender inequality coupled with the climate crisis is regarded as one of the greatest challenges of our time. Climate change drives migration and conflict across the world, making women vulnerable to all forms of gender-based violence, sexual violence, human trafficking, child marriage, and other forms. This is why we are continuing with our My Climate Change Story project, which was launched on March 18 in parallel with the 2022 UN Commission on the Status of Women, or UNCSW, which aimed to offer training in producing short videos using a cell phone and to collect climate change stories from the people experiencing climate change and to work together to protect the environment, to push for change. And more importantly, to raise the awareness that people most affected by climate change, who are women and girls, and those most active in making a difference, have the right to be making decisions that affect their own and their families' fates, and to be involved in the formulating of solutions that are otherwise imposed by national governments and distant corporations. So the videos will be uploaded to our My Climate Change YouTube channel to begin a global discussion, and we will showcase the final outputs at our biennial in November. And learnings from our work will be shared widely through a report that will also be presented at the 67th UNCSW next year. Now, may I take this opportunity to thank and introduce our hardworking climate change committee led by the head of IAWRT US chapter and today's moderator, Sheila Dallas-Kasman. Sheila is an award-winning broadcast journalist, a women's rights advocate and media trainer. Sheila wears many caps. She is IAWRT's main representative to the United Nations and is also the chair of Cities for CEDAW, New York City, a volunteer coalition of community organizations working to push for laws and policies that advance equality for women and address all forms of gender discrimination. She's a drama and social radio practitioner who uses theatrical arts and drama processes as tools for social change, and is a recipient of the UN Women Champion for Change for her work. And the production crew also behind the scenes includes today's technical director and IAWRT treasurer, Jola Dionis Mamungun from the Philippines. And again, on behalf of IAWRT, we thank our JMIC and UNESCO partners, and we are looking forward to listening and learning from our esteemed speakers today and all of you who are here. Happy World Press Freedom Day, and thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Violet. I'm so glad that you brought up the issue of human activities and the whole bit about press freedom and the increasing threats the degree of climate change is causing. Thank you for that. But more so, thank you for bringing up the pandemic as a weapon against journalists and female journalists, using the Turkish example. Thank you so much. I know we have an interesting program here today, but I want to say, I would like each of you here present, and that goes for our audiences. I would like for you to be present, and if you have access needs, to take care of your access needs, meaning we want you to care for yourself. If you need to eat something because of perhaps that non-communicable disease like diabetes, which nobody can see, we can't see you right now, please do go ahead and do that. And for our panelists on camera, if it's a situation for you and you need to leave, just turn your camera off, send us a message, and we will get that. We have to take care of ourselves like we take care of our environment, right? So in this gathering, we're going to be exploring ways to democratize climate media news. And what does that mean? I can't tell you that I know. We're here to find answers and to explore this theme. And we'll find out together. We are seekers. And I'm so happy and honored to be in company with all of you as we hold each other with compassion today about our Earth and climate. Sometimes it makes me want to cry. I want to preface the start with something that I think is important. For the first time in the history of the CSW, Commission on the Status of Women, each year at the CSW, there's this agreed conclusion as to what will happen next until the next CSW. And for the first time in its history, climate change was mentioned, journalists was mentioned, and with entire paragraphs, which are really, really a game changer. And I want to just read this quote: recognize the role of women journalists and media professionals in raising public awareness about climate, environmental, and disaster issues, and take measures to create and maintain in law and in practice a safe and enabling environment which allows them to perform their work independently and without undue interference, including by combating all forms of discrimination, harassment, and violence online and offline. I'm going to repeat the theme for World Press Freedom Day: journalism under this digital siege. And I also want to shout out and thank Pamela Morgan of Zonta, the executive committee of NGO also, and a member of IAWRT, whose idea it is for us to be doing these cell phone videos. And now IAWRT jumped at the opportunity to do this. So I'm hailing you, Pam. We have quite a state of phenomenal experts here in their fields of practice who will make presentations before you today. And then after that, we will have a discussion. And I think we do have a performance too, to lighten the load of perhaps what you might hear or what you might not hear. Because sometimes the people, all of you who are here, and I heard we have quite an audience here, over 100 people present, that the news alone make me sick, right? So just keep your feet planted on the ground and your back to your chair. And let's just listen with intent. Jola, are we going to be showing our videos now?
Yeah,
We have
video.
our, okay, good. So let me say a little bit about that. Can you please show the Harvard University one first for really great reasons. So we've asked people, we had 315 people who registered for the workshop, and we have 115 who were present because we had a little Zoom thing. But we sent the training out to everyone in the who registered for the workshop, which included journalists and members of civil society, rural women, etc. And I'm pleased with what's happening. I think people are scared. We just started. We got some interesting videos, they're amateur videos, etc. But this first video that we're going to be seeing is from Angela Zhang. She's a student of energy and environment at Harvard University.
Hi there, my name is Angela Zong, and I am a student at Harvard University studying energy and the environment. I'm originally from Houston, Texas, which brings me into my climate story. Being from the port near the Gulf of Mexico, I've experienced multiple hurricanes in my life, as well as environmental health disasters and other effects of climate change. So I know firsthand how important it is for us all to do our part. This is more than just reducing, reusing, and recycling. Many of these individual actions must be institutionally supported in order to have an effective change, instead of just putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. One thing that my team at Scale the Rail did is advocate for the university and as well as for the city of Boston to increase transportation access, especially for low-income communities. Currently, if you overlay a map of the income distribution of Boston area residents against a map of the T stations, many of the subway stops do not overlap with the most low-income areas. We need to increase accessibility since transportation is one of the top 2 emissions that come from Boston. Boston is able to be a leader in the climate space and in energy and transportation that can reflect onto the US, but also nationally and internationally. This creates a paradigmatic shift in which we concern ourselves with not only climate advocacy, but also equitable solutions. Our targets need to be more ambitious and more inclusive in order to address the most pressing and existential problem of our generation. Thank you so much.
Right, so we're just going to run right into the next film, which is from Caroline. And I know you're in the audience. I hope I haven't met. Sometimes Carolyn and Caroline sounds, you spell the same way and then it's pronounced different. Gatwiri, her film is about the River Narrow in Kenya. Caroline is from the library department at the Masai Mara University of Kenya. And I think this river is in the Masai area. And I think it's might be Caroline's first film, really, yay.
This is River Narok. It is mostly known by the locals because of claiming the lives of residents, with the recent incident being that of a university student that drowned. The river is both a blessing and a curse. The locals use it for farming, fetching water to use in their homes, washing clothes, and watering the animals. Narok is majorly inhabited by the Maasai community, who are pastoralists. Hence, the main purpose of the river is watering the animals. This bridge was constructed for the locals to ease movement from point A to point B. However, it was not good enough, hence a better bridge was constructed for the people. Over the past 2 months, the river has been drying up. Only small channels of the massive river Narok is what is left. For a person that has never been in this region, they cannot believe that this river used to claim the lives of people. The only thing left in this place is stones, mud, and a dry pathway. The bridge no longer serves its purpose. Due to climate change, the animals and residents are forced to start looking for other alternatives for survival. The women in this area suffer the most because they have to walk long distances to look for places where the river is yet to dry up completely, so as to get water to cook, clean, and wash their clothes. For other women, they have to incur the extra price of paying for water at 20 shillings per jerrycan. The big question left is, what happens to the residents that cannot afford buying water? What happens to the Maasai kettle? What happens to the farmer that depends on the river for irrigation? What happens to the woman that cannot walk long distances to look for water? Thank you.
So I'm sure you have notes, but I'd like to take this opportunity now to introduce our esteemed panelists, and then we can go into if you would like to comment on this. I want to start with Dr. Banu. Nupan is trained in hydro systems, water resources management, and knowledge management. He has a PhD in water resources management from Canada and a second doctorate degree in business administration from the International School of Management in France and the USA. He started his career as a change agent for a GTZ-funded agricultural inputs project in Eastern Nepal in 1987. He also served as an agriculture. He also served as an what is going on here? He also served an agriculture and natural resource management specialist for a government research organization in Nepal. During 1997-98, he worked as a consultant in the US and served in several Southeast Asian countries. And during 1999, early 2000, he was associated with Integrated Consultants of Nepal. He joined UNESCO as a program specialist in 2000 and served with UN system-wide World Water Assessment Program. He was transferred to the UNESCO office in New Delhi in September 2004, where he was responsible for the implementation of the International Hydrological Program in the preparation and design of regional projects and practices on hydrology and water resources. Currently, he's working for UNESCO as a program manager for ICT and sciences and open access to scientific research. He's also working in the area of open data, essentially to improve and increase access to scientific data and information. He also is a visiting professor and regularly teaches courses related to knowledge management, multi-criteria decision-making, water resources management, and disaster risk reduction at university. I'm sure that vignette appeals to him. I'm going to move on to Professor Elizabeth Eid. Elizabeth Eid is a journalist, writer, and professor of journalism studies at Oslo Met, which I think is Oslo Metropolitan University. She has in-depth knowledge of Afghanistan due to her many visits to the country, cooperating with Afghan PEN and also with other organizations working for media freedom in the country. Bless you. She has published 5 novels and a large number of nonfiction books, most of them with a transnational focus. Her latest book, co-authored with her husband, addressed Hindu nationalists in India. She co-chaired, these are her collaborations, with a Professor Risto Cornelius at Tampere University of Medical Climate, a researchers network studying the media coverage of climate change with emphasis on Climate Summit and IPCC AR5 coverage, which she'll explain to us later on. Welcome, Elizabeth. If you don't mind me go first name, Banu and I talked about that before, all right? So we just want to make this very, friendly, right? Not that it wouldn't be friendly. Gaya Katrina Cabito is a journalist from the Philippines. She writes stories about the environment, climate crisis, human rights, and the COVID-19 pandemic. She's from philstar.com, a Manila-based online newsroom, which she joined in 2017. She has been writing about environmental issues and climate change since 2019 through the lenses of human rights and community empowerment. Her work is focused on the people on the periphery, development-induced displacement, and those affected by and adapting to climate change. Also, I'm going to jump to, you were a fellow of Climate Tracker and received story grants from the Pulitzer Prize Center's Rainforest Journalism Fund and EJN. Thank you, right? Impressive. I'm looking forward to this. Jola, when each speaker speaks, can we just have their entire bio on for our viewers? Dr. Michelle Ferrier is Executive Director of the Media Innovation Collaboratory, an incubator for media and technology communication solutions. She's the founder of Trollbusters, an educational service for journalists experiencing digital harms. Dr. Ferrier is an internationally recognized award-winning technologist, journalist, scholar, researcher, author, and speaker, and around technology and digital online spaces. Her pioneering research mapping media deserts and monitoring and modeling digital harms has won her grant support from organizations at the Knight Foundation, Democracy Fund, and others. She has won international and national professional recognition, including 3 silver 2022 Anthem Awards, the AEJMC Professional Freedom and Responsibility Award, and Press Freedom Work, and the Dewey Community Award, and it goes on and on and on. It will be in the chat. Tapista Nebusoba is a senior journalist at the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation who combines contemporary, Tapista, where's your face? I don't see you. And traditional media communications, gained over 3 decades to contribute to progressive society. Her wealth of experience in content development is demonstrated through her passion for human rights, gender and governance issues, agriculture and food security. And then we have Una Solberg, who is going to close us out. So first, I hope I did justice to everybody. Gator, can you show your face, please? And all the, yes, thank you very much. We lost Tapista.
Tapista is here.
Yeah. Okay, so can we have her on screen, right? So you've just seen two clips. I call them kind of amateur clips where people were trained to have agency to tell their own story about climate change. Often we believe that we get a lot from the sciences, which I think Banu will maybe touch on. And we hear about 2% degree of that we need to get to. I honestly don't believe we can reverse. I just think we can do better going forward. That's my personal opinion. And then we saw this young lady, student from Harvard University, sharing her story about her concerns about emission, automobile emission, and she mentioned hurricane in where she's from on the border with Latin America on the southern part of the United States, something like that. And then we saw the River Narrow. So who would like to have a go at that first before we go to our presentation?
Michelle?
Yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
One of the things that I want to help frame this conversation is to describe some of the work that I've done through the Media Deserts Project in mapping the local news situation at the local level. Back in 2010 and moving forward, I began to use geographic information systems and geotagging to map here in the United States where local news was being disseminated. And what I was attempting to create through some of that visuals, and I'll show some of those later, is an awareness of where we lack access to news and information at the local level. As Violet pointed out earlier in our conversation, the nexus between good information at the local level and climate change are directly linked to people's ability to be able to navigate the changes at the local level. And so one of the things that we need to look at is that larger complex of the challenges of being able to report from these areas as professionals and be able to coordinate, as IAWRT is doing, the stories of the local situated knowledge of what's happening at the local level to fill in those gaps where we lack access to fresh local information. And so I'll be sharing a little bit more through our conversation about how that modeling and our ability to be able to remotely sense what's happening in these communities and be able to get that situated knowledge directly from a citizen journalist who we've enrolled in the process of being eyes and ears on the ground to help the world see what's happening in our communities and the deep impact on our lives.
Thank you for that offer, Michelle. Thank you for that offer. I think you suddenly got silent. And any thoughts on the clip that you have seen? I know you talk about the whole geographical thing and the local.
I think one of the things that we are seeing online right now, and I want to frame this in the larger digital culture, which is what I operate in in monitoring the network analysis and the environment of our digital culture, not only for digital harms, but also for monitoring the flow of communication and modeling that ecosystem. And one of the things that we're seeing in the challenges online, in the attacks against journalists who are reporting not only on climate change, but the political environment and geopolitics. All politics are local, and we're seeing, as Violet has said, the deep importance of local information to be able to help make decisions about what needs to happen in local communities. And on the internet, and what we see with this digital culture is the diminishment of that local knowledge, people and their lived experiences, and the heightened focus on politicians and other authorities and thought leaders. We are missing, and what's in the gap are those stories of what's on the ground, what's happening, and what might be solutions for a particular region. And so the work that I do on mapping those local ecosystems, and my colleagues in other countries who use the methodologies that I've developed to map their local news ecosystems and develop innovations at the local level, like these climate change stories that you're developing, to help make it visible at the local and regional levels so that people can come together to create solutions.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm wondering if I might go directly to Dr. Napano, because of your work with hydraulic or hydrological systems and that sort of thing. Does this, I'm looking at the river now clip, which you can, within your presentation, if this resonates with the work you are doing, could you just talk about that?
Thank you so much, Sheila. And please do not refer to me as doctor. I'm fine and being Banu, and I'm happy with my name, and no prefix, no suffix. And but anyways, and I think some of these local accents are extremely important. And yesterday, when I was talking with you and talking with the others in the team, I had told them that given the fact that we have become a digital being, as 63% of the whole humanity is somehow connected to internet, and more information sourcing, we don't go and like flip the pages of newspaper, but rather focus, try to find that information in Google. What happens is, every time you click on a source about, for example, I'll give an example. I was in fact looking at what is the name of that of a slum in Metro Manila. It's called Tondo District. So if you want to make changes in Tondo District, it's you cannot find this information by visiting global, say, website, unless there are lots and lots of information about Tondo District is submitted by people from Tondo District in the local, say, content providers. So what happens is that determines, yesterday I was telling you that we do not click more than 3 times essentially to find our information. So unless we have got someone from that river talking about the climate change and posting it online, what may happen is we will simply find the information that may be distilled, tricked, manipulated, and audited, and edited as well, by someone else from outside. So that person will hardly have any incentive whatsoever to provide the right information. So to have the right information, journalists who will generate local content and then share it in different type of digital media. So some of those type of actions are extremely important, and those actions will essentially change how the climate change action will take place on the ground. Over to you, Sheila.
Thank you very much for that. Elizabeth,
Yeah, I wasn't prepared that this was a conversation, but since you mentioned what you mentioned, Banu, I would like to join in because one of our goals is to increase climate literacy among journalists as being an educative institution where we educate journalists, which is the oldest one in Norway, by the way. And I have seen from our network, global network, that there is a dire need to coordinate efforts here. So one of my hopes for this discussion is actually that we could join forces and create a kind of resource bank with videos, lectures, literature, stories that we could all share, not only in the IAWRT, but also with the centers that I come from. I think that would be a great result. But I thought we had a plan for speeches also, but I might be wrong.
You do. Now, Gaia and Tapista, there is this video, the videos that you have seen. And we first of all want to thank the two filmmakers, Angela and Caroline, for their submissions. If this appealed to you and you want to take a minute and talk about what resonates in terms of the Philippines, which Banu just mentioned, and Banu, have said, local, like Michelle, said, and, by the people, or by the community, for the community, and with the community, which might include our journalists, in general.
Yeah, hello everyone. So those videos were actually they may be amateur, but it is nice to see that there are young communicators worldwide who are taking on the challenge of telling climate stories, how climate change affects them. And climate change, it is the story of our lives. It is the story of the next generation. So it is very important that it is a complex and important story that affects all aspects of our lives, and it is a story that cannot be ignored, especially as the science says that things are very bad. So seeing those videos really inspired me, and it reminded me of the time when I covered the COP26 climate talks in Glasgow last year, because there I saw young people. They held protests in Scotland last year, and the protest had a huge impact on me because during those protests, they expressed fears, but about the kind of present and future that they will have, but they also expressed hope that their activism will help drive change. So I think it is really important that we have, that we teach young communicators, even though they will not take up journalism once they graduate from universities, but it is important that we teach them how to tell that climate story, be it with the goal of documenting the changes that are happening around them, or by making people take action. So I believe that young communicators can be critical influencers in national and global climate conversations.
Thank you for that offer. Tapista, you are from Kenya and you know the story. I don't know if you have anything to add to this, what this means for you, seeing a local person in your country who is telling the story of concern to them. And I think 14 bodies were fished out of that river in 1 year. So just to frame it a little before we move on.
Thank you, Sheila, for asking me to weigh in on this issue. I'm sorry that somewhere along the way I had dropped out of the discussion. It is quite interesting to see what Carol's video on the river in Narok. And I wish to just say that the drought in the country has been realized. And the areas that have suffered more are the arid and semi-arid areas, and Narok falls in the arid and semi-arid areas. I wish to bring in, to weigh in with a story, with a story that we were covering in Mount Kenya on potato production. And I just want to say that we were doing a program. This was a project by the Human Practice Foundation, and they were improving yields by potato farmers in Timau, which is in Meru County. Now, the planting season was in October, and rains were expected 2 weeks or 3 weeks later for the next activity. And to just say that by the end of October, there were no rains. December, there were no rains. The harvest was expected early this year in March. Although the farmers had followed every step that was advised by the agronomists, and to just say that if you can allow me to just switch off my video, I wish to just say that the farmers would not realize the high yields that they had been promised, mainly because of the drought season. And this was realized throughout the country. So this story of potato production resonates with the reduced levels of rivers, and therefore less water. And to say that climate change is being realized by smallholder farmers, even much more.
Thank you.
Because, yes, and this showed us that, one, farmers need information. They are grappling with the ideal channels for where to get information from. And therefore, disseminating weather information to farmers is very critical. That involvement with farmers in Timau on potato production, they realized low yields that were not, the expected high yields. However, those who were in the project, the project by Human Practice Foundation and Syngenta Foundation, at least harvested something. The farmers who are not in the project and therefore not practicing smart agriculture realized, I could say, very low yields, and they could not even sell. Some did not even harvest anything.
Thank you.
So climate information is very important. Thank you, Sheila.
Don't mention, my darling, it shows us that this is a global problem. And so what I'm going to do now is go into some presentation, and I'm so happy with those contributions, the conversations that was provoked by these two videos. It just makes me feel, it authenticates what we're doing in this, or put some value on this. And with what Elizabeth said earlier about, making sure that this grows some, is it teeth or feet or whatever it is, that it can be in, institutions, academic institutions and other. Now, our presentation, which may I cut you a little bit, Dr. Banu, hydro system. I'm going to tell you exactly how it's going to go. And I'm bringing up Dr. Banu because of the hydraulic video that we just saw and the conversation that just happened. And I know he's going to talk a bit about data that Elizabeth used data in her work. And the segue into that is really important. And then we go to Gaia, who is doing the human rights aspect of things before we go to Michelle and Topista. So Dr. Banu, the floor is yours, or the screen is yours.
Thank you so much. You again referred to me as a doctor.
Oh, sorry.
I resent that.
Yeah. Okay, Banu, will you?
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sheila, and thank you so much, IAWRT, for inviting me here today. And this is a great pleasure and privilege to speak to you. And happy World Press Freedom Day to everyone. We live in a world where we don't have to find information and news these days, and information and news rather come and find us. I see this because 63% of the humanity is connected to the internet. And yes, we live in a world that is extremely interesting, but also we live in a world that is full of enormous contradictions. This webinar is full of an audience consisting of well-educated people. And there are 115 million youth who are out of school today. We're talking about climate change today, but we can't live without gas guzzling, heating, and cooling systems. Realizing these stark realities, in 2015, the international community adopted a set of 17 goals as part of their commitment towards sustainable development agenda. The world redirected itself and its resources to eradicate poverty and hunger, providing quality education and healthcare for all, and committed to combat climate change and environmental degradation. However, 6 years on, almost 7 years now, let me speak plainly, we are failing. You may have, read the report that Jeffrey Sachs just reported on SDG Index's dashboard report, and which noted that there is no country on track toward achieving all goals. And for goal 13, which is about climate change, even out of G20 countries, only one has presented a 2-degree temperature rise scenario compatible with Paris, the COP21 consensus. So till 2019, greenhouse gas concentration have increased to alarming level. And this is something that Violet also had noted in her presentation. The air that we breathe in has about 410 parts per million of carbon dioxide, about 1866 parts per billion of methane, and about 332 parts per billion of nitrous oxide. So this is very serious. And as far as the temperature is concerned, last 4 decades have been successively warmer than anything previously recorded in the history. During 2001-2020, the world became 1 degree warmer than if you compare this figure with 1915 to 1900. And since 1900, the Earth has already become warmer by almost 1.2 degrees, and this is increasing like anything. As a result of this, global average precipitation has also increased, and this has primarily happened on the land rather than on the ocean, which was happening before. So it's because of this, mean sea level has also increased by about 20 centimeters between 1901 and 2018. But what is alarming is the mean sea level has primarily increased by 3.6 millimeter per year between 2006 and 2018, and it is increasing and as we go on. And as a result, extreme events are occurring in the world, and it has increased by an alarming 83%, world over. If these are happening, why we don't hear about these things so often? We always thought we hear about, like Elon Musk, buying Twitter, and it became, our trending news in no time. How we heard about, how much billions, like Mr. Bezos, lost, in his divorce proceeding, and these type of information it becomes, so viral in no time. But some of these, very important things are not being democratized, as much as, they should be. So news matters, but accuracy of the news, matters more. And accurate information about climate change is vital to democratize knowledge, and it helps conceive new ideas, new programs, and also convince decision makers of climate change significant impact and urgent action that is needed to develop measure. But there is a sphere of disinformation, which is in fact, a spanner in our work. What is primarily happening is, before we talk about this democratization of knowledge, we must acknowledge a few things. There is no one single media or new channels that are opaque and opaque for possible, political process, pressure, as well as, misdirection, that is. There is no media outlets that are free of some level of biases globally. There is some level of policing, as well as, editing happens all the time. And so the thing is that, when we receive something from the source, and by the time, it reaches the ultimate, users, something goes wrong along the way. So, and I was telling before, tweaking SEO or search engine optimizer, these algorithms are so simple. Even I can do it, with my very little knowledge of, digital technology. So this actually happens. We can, in fact, dictate what type of information can go to you. And then we have recently seen, in the election of US, for example, Mr. Bloomberg, spent 195 million just for the media. So there is a lot of money being exchanged from one place to the other, primarily to change some of these very stark reality. So if technology is the solution to democratize climate change, let us in fact see that okay, in the development of technology, and a lot of things happen. Microchip was developed, that revolutionized the world. The World Wide Web and Genome Project were nothing short of a revolutionary process or steps for humanity. We can download about 10 gigabytes of a movie in obviously no time, and process about 20 gigabytes of genome sequences of an individual gene code, and come up with a targeted treatment, for example. But having said that, it is only natural for me to ask to everyone present here, what is the frontier technology that is helping us provide a response to climate change? I do not know. What is the next microchip against climate change reporting? What is the next genome project that can reverse global temperature rise? What is the next World Wide Web to deal with greenhouse gases? I do not have any solution to that. But one thing that I will say is, the broader question is maybe, knowledge divide. I say that, 63% of the world is connected, but what about 37%? Think about an election, where only 63% vote and 37% are left out. So that means, our entire, sphere of knowledge collection, knowledge processing, and knowledge transmission, it's somewhere at fault. So maybe that's where, we have to bring in the group like yours, so that, something can be changed. But the problem is, because of these issues, there is a new type of dependency that is coming up. And I say that, we are in fact creating unknowingly knowledge inequalities all over the world. This is right now, it's not about, the equality of knowledge, but inequality of knowledge, that is in fact, changing the reality. So what can we do? Maybe we must institute more multi-stakeholder processes such as this one, and provide incentives for environmentally friendly initiatives, such as those two videos that we saw. Maybe provide easy accessible knowledge resources to ensure that professionals have access to latest knowledge on climate change. I'm not too sure who has the access to latest climate change. If you look at the latest we call it assessment 6 report that was presented during COP27 in Glasgow, majority of the countries have not provided the data for people's consumption. So what we are doing, our knowledge itself is half-baked. So we have to adopt more openness, more open access, more openness of science, more open lab, etc. in all aspects of research, teaching, as well as knowledge. At UNESCO, we are trying to collaborate with the member states, civil society organizations like yourself and private sector to explore new avenues to deal with climate change. We are providing policy advice, building capacities at all levels, and bridging existing knowledge divide. But there are a few fundamentals, and I think maybe those fundamentals will be taken on board by IAWRT as a conclusion of this webinar. Maybe we have to expand access to information, knowledge, and make it inclusive. Right now, some of these things are not inclusive. The other thing is, build capacity of journalists on climate change. Perhaps, some of you may have seen the booklet or this handbook that we published, which is called, the Getting the Message Across, the Reporting on Climate Change and Sustainable Development. This was primarily, like attuned or, for Asia and Pacific, but maybe, similar sort of, handbook must be published for Africa as well. We have to somehow, enhance people's ability to use this information to their advantage. And primarily, what we have to do is we have to create a conduit to generate local content so that some of these local thinkers can change. So I think I'll conclude by saying that we are at the inflection point today. But there is one point that I must ask you to consider, that last night when you all slept under the comfort of your fan or the AC, approximately 700 people went hungry to their bed. So I think our work must have a human dimension, and we must ask whether our intervention will aggravate inequality or accelerate sustainable development.
Thank you, Banu. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Right to you, Elizabeth. Dr. Banu talks about data collection and the incomplete science that exists or does not exist around climate change and all of that. And you've done excellent research and that sort of thing. So I just want you to jump off there.
Well, yeah, maybe I can just show you this book then. This is the latest book on climate change. It's global, and the photograph is from Bangladesh, by the way, taken by myself. But no, what is the good news about science, I think, is that nowadays you see that the IPCC scientists are more willing than before to connect the global livelihood experiences of people to the climate science and to the global warming.
For our audience.
The International Panel of Climate Change by the UN. You know that. I think most of you. Okay, now I want to just say a few words about the three very brutal paradoxes that we face, because these are the ones you feel very strongly when you attend, for example, a climate summit. I was at Glasgow, I was also in Paris, and I was in Durban. So I have a bit of experience as a journalist covering these, anthills, as it were. They are very, very crowded and full of people who try to get their messages across. The first one is the very known one, that the countries of the global north are historically more responsible for the climate crisis, but they suffer less, people there. Second one is of particular interest to us because we have covered the youth activism and have made interviews with global youth activists from across the planet. And we see that these people, that's another paradox, they will inherit the planet and live towards the end of this century. Many of us will not, that's for sure. While the older politicians who decide seem to have a 5-year or the 4-year re-election horizon. This is one major obstacle to improvement. And the third one is that women do less harm to the planet, research tells us, and suffer more for the increased burdens of the climate crisis. And that, of course, hampers democracy. This is in itself a democratic problem. When it comes to research about gender roles and climate change, I'd like to mention just a few conclusions briefly. Men earn more than women, and it means that they consume more than men. Women consume less than men. And women walk and use collective transportation in Oslo, where I live, but also across the planet. And they use less cars, and thus they also pollute less. And the crucial transportation and energy sectors are dominated by men. So if men had copied women's travel habits, the CO2 emissions would be drastically reduced. Women trust, and this is another interesting result, they trust the climate science more, at least the research that I've seen, than men, and are more willing to support political measures to reduce emissions. Women also suffer from increased workload, and that was shown brilliantly in the video, so I won't dwell with that. But due to deforestation, polluted water, extreme weather, ruining crops and livelihoods. And more women than men die under natural disasters, which are aggravated by the climate crisis. I go directly, since we don't have much time, to some of the things I think are important when it comes to journalism. Why isn't there more accurate coverage? I think, Banu, you asked a little bit of that question, and I think it's vital. I think one of the reasons is that it's a kind of slow process, although there are peaks to the process which are very dangerous and brutal. But being a slow process, there are so many other events that might then compete with the climate knowledge. It could also be that in many countries in the so-called global south, there are not vital, let's say, IPCC scientists who can directly communicate the results. There is, for example, a doctor in Bangladesh who's very good at this, Samuel Hook, and there are in some other countries, but many countries don't have access to direct access to scientists, as we have here in Norway a lot, actually. I think also it's the abstract and the concrete. I was about to ask, can you put the first slide again, Jola? I see the second slide is up now. That way, yeah. I think the global warming is still to many people a kind of abstract thing, that they don't connect to their local experiences, although it's now more done than before. Therefore, I think the special challenge to journalists is to have a people-oriented journalism, reporter moving at the grassroots, be they coffee growers in Ethiopia or for that matter, Kenya and Uganda, or be they farmers in the Himalayan hill tracts, which I've visited several times, by the way, where extreme rainfalls may lead to erosion and catastrophic landslides and then floods downstream. I think, Banu, being from Nepal, you are very aware of this. The extreme weather along the Norwegian coast threatens local communities. Roofs fly off the houses and people have to move. So this is not something only for the so-called global south. When being interviewed by reporters, these human beings who suffer these damages to their livelihoods, they tend to relate the crisis to their own experiences on the ground, and now they are justified more than before by the science itself, which is a wonderful achievement, actually. Such grassroots reporting, when it occurs, and it seems to occur a bit more than before, may make it easier for audiences to identify and to thus become more motivated to do what is really needed, to pressurize the powerful and to take local measures. And that is, again, a democratization. Then it's about connecting the dots. What we learned from the youth project is that many young climate scientists, be it in Indonesia or be it in South Africa, they oftentimes start their engagement as carers. And we who are women, we know much about caring, but so do all these young people, be they men or women. And they care for threatened species, they care for the natural habitats, but then develop their views to connect this to the climate crisis. And this holistic approach is actually a very important, I think, feature of the journalism as well. So reporters also increasingly do this, try to promote such perspectives. And we see also another feature which I find very interesting, and that is that some of these young activists, for example, in Pakistan, which is one of the countries participating, have become educators for other young people so that they learn from each other. And I think some of us who are getting a bit beyond the age of youth, we might not always be aware of this. Sometimes these initiatives pass under the radar. One advice to climate journalism is to avoid gloom and doom. There is much of a catastrophic situation now. The situation is alarming, but alarmism is something else, which has been written also by some of the scientists. It's very severe with the drought in several countries in Africa, South Sudan, and also elsewhere, and in Afghanistan as well in Asia. Wildfires are occurring much more than before. However, the perspectives of repair, of local measures to climate adaptation and mitigation are important parts, I think, of what we now increasingly in journalism training call constructive journalism or solution-oriented journalism. I think I'm going to wrap up very soon, that we need to be more aware of positive role models. Many climate change activists have started small scale, such as Greta Thunberg, who was sitting alone at 15 years old outside the Swedish parliament with a small climate strike signboard. Through her resilience and her persistence, she attracted media attention and was invited to speak with the powerful gather on several occasions. Our research shows that there are several such role models. We interviewed Vanessa Nakate from Kenya long before she got famous at the COP26 in Glasgow, and I saw her also there. But she was then a grassroots activist in Kenya who, by her way of speaking, actually managed to get attention. There are several such models, I said. Then I want to conclude by saying something about older and younger women. Older women have experienced changes in their livelihood through the years they've lived, and many of these can be connected to the climate crisis. Young women become increasingly aware and speak with the ethos of a generation who have to live until the end of the century, as I've said, and listening to these voices jointly could be great journalism, I believe. Journalists need networking and protection, and more women join journalism education than ever, and just also than the profession. This means that climate literacy has to be an important part of what we teach in journalism schools and editorial rooms as well. So I think JMIC, that I represent, as well as the Media Climate Network, we work to really enhance such a development, but to do it with our hands stretched out, to reach out to all of you, to see how we can join efforts when it comes to these educative efforts, because I think they are of vital importance. And we are starting now with a partnership with a university in Lahore, Pakistan, to develop something for the whole of Pakistan. And from that, you will all be able to share.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm going to give him time, and thank you. Yes, I'm going to go right now to let me go to Tapista. Tapista, you have maybe, I don't know what the timing is like, Jola, but I want to bring in the human rights aspect after, at the last bit of this, before we open up with Michelle and the ecological stuff that she talks about. Tapista?
Thank you, Sheila.
You have to see, everybody took about 4 minutes already from the beginning, because we had the video, so we had to recognize these videos. So if you could, please. Yes, thank you, my dear.
In the Kenyan situation is such that agriculture is key in our economy, and the smallholder farmers account for 80% of the agricultural production, and it employs more than 75% of the population, particularly in the rural areas. And yet climate change threatens agricultural productivity for smallholder farmers who have limited capacity to cope with its effects. Now, looking at climate change, Kenya has been realizing change in climate over a period of years. And this is experienced through frequent drought and floods. And this, the impact on farmers and farmers' livelihoods is the direct reduction in crop yields and loss of livestock. And we have also seen, conflict within communities over the natural resources. And then therefore there is need to address this issue. Now, Kenya's changing climate, looking at, Kenya experiences a general warming trend, and this has been recorded since the 1960s, and it continues to get worse. And the trend of rising temperatures is expected to continue. Rainfall patterns have changed, with long rainy seasons becoming shorter and the drier and short rainy seasons becoming longer and wetter. So looking at the climate risks, rising temperatures, we also have greater risk of extreme weather events. I just spoke about the issue of drought last year that caused the low yields for farmers. Even the mountains that had ice glaciers like Mount Kenya, we begin to realize the melting of those glaciers, and therefore very little snow on the mountain. So looking at the vulnerabilities, increased poverty, particularly in the arid and semi-arid areas, gender inequality, because again, women are more affected, and children, environmental degradation and loss of forest cover, and high and water scarcity. We have seen reports of and I think Carol's video speaks to this fact. And then heavy disease burden and limited access to quality healthcare. These are the issues that are affecting the communities. And of course, and what are the obligations of the government? The Climate Change Act of 2016 that responds to, is Kenya's guiding climate change response through mainstreaming climate change into sector functions. And this is domesticated after the Paris Agreement. So there are actions throughout the country. County governments are expected to factor in their budgets climate change action plans. So for us as media, we are duty bound to ensure climate change information is disseminated for public awareness, to ensure that they know what their individual individual responsibilities are, and the obligation by governments and other stakeholders. As media, we need to focus on adaptation, how communities can adjust to, in response to actual or expected climatic changes. Looking at climate smart agriculture stories or solution-based stories by smallholder farmers, women, young people, and people living with disabilities. We need to look into investigative stories on activities that are destructive. We have seen some of those in the country. One of the major stories is the Solai Dam tragedy that, you know, saw quite a number of, the result effect was, you know, over 40 deaths and the displacement of thousands in a village in the Rift Valley because of a burst dam and increased rain and therefore flooding that caused the bursting of the dams. And focusing on the government's obligations towards food security is very important in the country because, again, of prolonged droughts and lack of rain. Quite a number of communities have suffered a food deficit.
Thank you. Oh, God.
And then I think, if you don't mind, I wish to talk about some of the interventions with the media and my personal work with on agricultural stories. One of the things, apart from working on a live show, on a weekly live show on agricultural issues, working with community radio in the counties, and training of journalists, because we have been told that climate change, Banu actually alluded to it, about knowledge inequalities. Are we as journalists knowledgeable enough to cover climate change stories? And then the expansion of access to information, does it include journalists? In Kenya, we have realized that education or tertiary institutions are beginning to introduce climate change information or training. This is with Strathmore College, the Nairobi University, and of course, there have been short courses by stakeholder organizations for journalists. But are these adequate?
Tapista,
I think
this is
yes.
so important, hearing the mitigation side of this. Hopefully we bring it back in because we have 2 more speakers and the time is going. So would you mind kind of just wrap it up now? Because I mean, this is so, with the mitigation stuff, we want that. It is important that we know these solutions and so on, you know, please.
It up with the issue of knowledge inequalities. And Banu talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
If the rest of the world is talking about microchips and the next genome projects, yet in rural communities hardly have even access to channels of media. How can we therefore bridge this inequality gap to ensure that we are all on the same level and therefore to be part of the mitigation and the solutions to climate change? Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you so much for this offer. Michelle, I want to go to you now, and we know you know, everybody spoke to address the videos, as I said before. Sure. And so it's going to be less than 7 minutes because we have Dea, and I really want to hear the human rights aspect, and this is to be continued. Great. You don't put so much experts together in such a short time, you know. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheila, and thank you for the comments from my colleagues from around the globe. As I said and framed in my earlier comments around the videos, my work is in looking at the linkages between the digital and the physical world. I want to share my screen really briefly and show you some of the work. Are you seeing the petite nerdy screen? Let me make sure you are seeing base data that satellites that circle the globe take pictures of the Earth's surface, and has been doing that for over 30 years. This is some of the science that has come out of NASA, and some of the work that scientists have used this visual data to be able to map the changes to our local systems, our local geographies as a result of the changes in climate. My work in mapping these geographies starts with that data, and over 30 years ago, in looking at that Landsat data and working with scientists at NASA who were using and developing remote sensing techniques to be able to visually analyze this data, as well as make it visible to the local populations. I worked in my research to take that data from the digitizing of that data. So my job was to create those digital points and digitize that Landsat data into the GIS systems that we currently use to map our information to geography. So I am literally baked into those Google Maps and systems because of the work that I did at NASA many years ago. I built on that work with the Media Deserts Project, which is designed to map that very layer of access that we're talking about now around the globe, and the nexus of powerful and localized information to allow people to be able to make a difference in their local communities. When we talk about knowledge management, there are various stages to the development of people's ability in being able to move them towards action in these critical areas, especially around issues like climate change and global warming that are slow processes that are difficult for people to understand and feel as the water is literally boiling around them. Knowledge management requires access to information, as we just heard, awareness and a visibility of what's happening in the system, data collection to be able to make the point with actual quantitative data, pulling that quantitative data into information that can then be brought back to those communities for them to establish knowledge around this issue, and that knowledge in context about how it affects their local geography. Ultimately, knowledge helps us move towards wisdom and action at the local level. In some of the mapping work that I have done using Media Deserts and doing local ethnographic work, particularly around our rural communities in the US, as well as around mapping issues like health issues of the opioid epidemic or the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, we see the real crisis of information at the local level with the lack of broadband access, the lack of information and awareness of what's happening at the local level. This geospatial analysis is critical to helping make visible what's happening at the local level and to allow local people to find each other and connect in order to be able to create action at the local level. One of the things that we have done is take that mapping data and actually develop and model the systems at the local level to see where the communication flows are, where we might lack access to broadband, and make sure that our algorithms and our systems are making visible the stories at the local level. Our Google Earth systems are making invisible our rural communities and these stories. And I think the key so that we can aggregate the important local stories that are happening. Thank you. Sheila, I can't hear you.
Thank you. Everything just tied into, I think there is a new system where even though you go mute, somebody's listening to you somewhere else. So I have to get out of that frame of mind. Thank you very much for that. We're going to go over to the human rights aspect of this. And I just want to repeat that Dea Katrina Dabiko, we're just rushing through things now. She's been writing about environmental issues through the lens of human rights and community empowerment, right? So can you talk about that in the sense of what does human rights have to do also with what we're talking about with climate change? We heard Banu talk about this 63% precipitation on land. I don't know if it's on land, to make up the number where it is, which was only on water before. And it seemed like we're gonna burn up. And somebody mentioned we need to adopt. I think Elizabeth said that something about adopting, and Kapista also said that. I don't know if I can adopt to, I've been in countries 120 something degrees temperature. It wasn't easy, I burn, and look at me, you know what I'm saying? So how does human rights fit into this whole thing?
Okay. Yeah. So good evening. Good evening from the Philippines. So for tonight's event, I will briefly talk about the connections between climate change and human rights and ways to report this existential crisis of our time.
Give me 1 minute. You can give me 1 minute. Sorry to interrupt you. For those of you in our audience, please put your questions in the chat. Not in the chat, there's a Q&A button there. Please use it to put your questions for any of the speakers you have here today. Thank you.
Okay, so the effects of climate change are already being felt now worldwide, and its impacts will get worse. So the Philippines, where I'm from, is a poster child for the impacts of climate change, which is manifested in devastating storms and sea level rise. So climate change is not only an environmental or political problem. As the Amnesty International puts it, it is the devastation that climate change is causing and will continue to cause for the humanity that makes climate change an urgent human rights issue. So climate change is threatening our very existence. It compromises the fundamental dignities of people. It is having harmful impacts on our health, food, livelihood, and home. So climate crisis is disproportionately affecting the poor, the women, and the children, and it will compound those existing inequalities. So as journalists, it is important that we report about the people who have long suffered from climate change impacts. And over the recent years, the climate justice movement across the world has boomed. People are calling for accountability from corporations, polluters, governments for human rights violations resulting from climate change, and some have even filed cases before courts. So I would just like to share a brief story. In 2021, I did this story about the chronic vulnerability of Casiglahan village residents to climate risk. So I talked to mothers who suffer the consequences the most because the familiar responsibilities fall on them. It's a story on the impact of watershed degradation on downstream communities. So Casiglahan, it was severely affected by a flooding in 2020 that was triggered by Typhoon Bangko, which is one of the most devastating storms in the Philippines in recent years. So the plight of Casiglahan residents underscore that housing is a basic human right because the houses there were built on a danger zone by the riverside. So you could imagine that the people would scramble to their rooftops to escape the raging flood waters. And that's very sad and terrifying. So extreme weather events and such as flood destroys people's homes and leaving them displaced. Sea level rise, which is a different thing, meanwhile, threatens the homes of millions living in coastal communities and low-lying places. So the right to adequate housing should be factored in for strategies for adaptation and mitigation for climate change. Sorry, the photo has been showing, the photo on screen is showing a different one. Can you move to the next photo? This is Casiglahan village, by the way. And I will just, can you, next slide, please? Okay. This one, recently I covered it on Earth Day. It was the Earth Day protest of fisher folk and local communities in Batangas province. So the text, the poster says, warning, fishing is our source of livelihood. So the fisher folk there are opposing the development of fossil gas plants and LNG terminals in their coast, saying such expansion will not only exacerbate existing pressures in the biodiversity rich Verde Island passage, but also threaten their communities that rely on the resources of the marine corridor to earn a living. And we also know that while natural gas or fossil gas emits less carbon dioxide than coal, its extraction, transformation, liquefaction result in the leakage of methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas. So for closing, I would just like to emphasize that people and human rights must be put at the center of the climate change conversation. Climate change is no longer a distant threat. It is no longer abstract. It will affect us personally and directly. And storytelling is a very powerful tool to communicate something as complex as climate change. And our stories have to engage. And how do we do that? We need to tell more stories about people whose human rights are being threatened by climate change. It is important that we include diverse and underrepresented voices, such as the poor and the indigenous peoples who have long been grappling with climate change impacts, yet their voices are often missing from the news coverage. And we also need to tell more stories about ordinary people who are dealing with the crisis and are doing something about it. Just like what Elizabeth mentioned about solutions-oriented journalism, we need more of that in our climate coverage. It is one way of democratizing climate stories. And lastly, as journalists, we have the power to write something that feels local, personal, relatable, and something that presents solutions. So thank you so much.
We didn't hear you, Phila.
God, what's wrong with me today?
Hi, Sheila. There's a question by Noni. I don't know whether you would wish that I respond to that question.
Oh, you responded already. The question was, Tapista, do you have a rural program such as Australia's ABC has? And I think ABC is Australian Broadcasting Corporation. We have current affairs following up.
Yes, and maybe I just wish to say that, in Kenya, there are so many radio stations and TV stations, but what I can say is that as an associate of Kilimo Media, we have been working with the community radio stations, ensuring that the community radio stations put up programs on agriculture and linking them up with the Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that there's an expert on a weekly basis to go to the radio stations. Now, these are radio stations around the country. If you work with the county, because the counties do not have similar weather, so according to the ecological zones, they have a schedule of topics related to the kind of crops that farmers grow in that specific county. And they're also working with the Kenya Agriculture Research, Carlo, the Kenya Agriculture Research in livestock and agriculture, of course, crops, sorry, putting up disseminating weather information. This model works better with community radio stations because they're based in the counties and very close, therefore, to the experts who are agricultural experts within the counties who are extension officers. So they are able to go to the radio stations. At the national level, we have weekly programs that are shorter, but previously I ran a 1-hour radio program called Mali Shambani. Mali Shambani is the title is in Swahili, means wealth on the farm. That was a weekly program, 1 hour, bringing guests in the program and also carrying voices of farmers on specific topics. Thank you. I hope that responds to the question that Noni asked.
Thank you very much, Tapista. I just want to say that where the Philippines are concerned, Gail, I can understand your work because of the attack on human rights defenders, journalists, and trade unions in your country. And the same is true for instance, Zimbabwe, where Violet is from, where these things are happening. and how do we, Banu spoke about disinformation. And you said, I think yesterday, mentioned the demand and the supply of disinformation. And that was percolating in my head while everyone was giving their presentations here. And the demand through our social media platforms of people who has the means and the money to perhaps pay others to do this, when I call it as it is, Facebook and Twitter, and now TikTok is become a part of that. And I know, Michelle, you're doing a lot about that in terms of disinformation and the whole dynamics of it, which Banu spoke about earlier. I don't want to prolong this. This is, wow, so much has happened here today. So much has happened here today, and I want us to breathe. Just take deep breaths. Yes. I'm going to, I think, Jola, you have a performance, and then we go to Una.
Yes, please.
Yes, let's lighten up this load of our earth that we love so much, and just embrace each other.
I think that we're overwhelmed both by government action and by the support you've shown. I think that we need to continue. What we say in Rappler is we're going to hold the line. We're not doing anything but journalism. We're speaking truth to power. That's what we do. That's what makes a democracy successful, the role of journalists, right? And we're going to keep doing that. We're not afraid, and we won't be intimidated.
For details, answers, facts denied. For stories and words in between the lines. Freedom from all kinds of prison. Clarity amid throes of reason. Journey on, keep searching. Never stop, keep going. Suffering concealed, destruction trivialized, inequality beautified, witch hunting revered, criminals unpunished, plunderers glorified. For details, answers, facts denied. For stories and words in between the lines. Freedom from all kinds of prison. Clarity amid throes of reason. Journey on, keep searching. Never stop, keep going. They made machines to For details, answers, facts denied, for stories and words in between the lines, freedom from all kinds of prison. Clarity amidst rows of rhythm. Journey on, keep searching. Never stop, keep going. Find the light, together shine the light, together keep up the fight. Find the light, together shine the light, together keep up the fight. Keep up the fight, keep up the fight. Keep up the fight.
That was like a music summary of the entire event. Thank you for that. But can we give them some identity? What's the name of the group? Yola?
The song was Journey On by Sandra Lisa Casambre Biseño of the People's Chorale of the Philippines.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to hand over to Una Solberg, who is the coordinator for JMIC, which means Journalism and Media, the Journalism and Media International Center in Oslo Met, again, lovingly Oslo Met, Oslo Metropolitan University in Norway. I don't think I have this long scribble here, Una, of summary, but time is flying, and I think the music just did it, and I just want to hand it over to you just now.
Thank you. I think it's been fascinating to listen to you. We have certainly learned that climate change is real and it's concrete in everybody's life. In the weekend, we could see that India is actually boiling. The whole subcontinent is undergoing a heat wave. I was also reading that a new survey has found that 39% of students in the UK see climate change as one of the top issues for their generation. So it's good that we have the young Swede Greta Thunberg and other youth activists around the world to inspire us. As we know, it's the World Press Freedom Day today. Congratulations to all of you, and in particular the winners of the UNESCO Press Freedom Prize, the Belarusian Association of Journalists. This year's theme for the celebration of UNESCO is journalism and the digital siege. Press freedom certainly is the essential climate solution, as it has been said. Many countries with most violence against environmental defenders and journalists also rank at the bottom of the World Press Index, published and launched today, actually. I want to thank you all for joining our event on the democratization of climate news. My climate change story is the headline, as you know. We are very proud to work with practicing journalists all over the world in the International Association of Women in Radio and Television. And we're very proud to cooperate with UNESCO, and we certainly hope that this can lead to further cooperation in the future. I also want to thank the local production team, and I want to thank the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who has given us funds for this workshop. We see climate change as crucial and to be prioritized in our work. You can find news and resources on our webpage. If you search JMIC and Oslo Mest, you will find us. And our sister website, as Elizabeth mentioned, mediaclimate.net. Please stay in touch and let us help each other to continue searching for good climate solutions to meet the challenging time ahead. Thank you all very much for the attention.
Sheila, we can't hear you, dear. Again. Something with the settings.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. I think I've learned a lot. My dad said every day you must learn something new. And even though I've been doing this work for a long time, I'm always looking for other things, and I've learned a lot. And this work continues. Thank you, Jola, who's behind the scene, who can show your face. Thank you, Linda. I think Linda is the president of the chapter in the Philippines. And Jola is the treasurer there. Violet Gondish, we can show your face now. Don't need to hide anymore. And I think we're going to bring our audiences to the fore. Right, Jola? You're being silent as me. It's this pandemic thing that's happening. But yeah. Thank you. Jadika and Para. It's good to see faces of people who were at the training. Wow, that's lovely. Ineza, Alan, Razia, one of our trainers. Mandira, there you are. A board member of IAWRT, right? I like to call names. I think names are important. Even though it might not be the name I would choose if I was born and allowed to grow and then just give myself a name. Saeed Mohammed, Samantha. Joel, I'm handing over to you. Sonia.
Just wait a little bit. I'm upgrading our attendees to panelists. Just a minute, actually. Okay, although a lot of them are declining to see their faces. Sorry about that. Okay. And those who accept it, please open your video.
Yeah, we'd like to have a picture with you guys. Yeah. Like the Noah's Ark. We're all going into this ark right now.
Okay. Before I decline, yeah, sorry about it. Okay, just continue, Gary. Okay, would you mind to open your video, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah, it's still closed.
Take those questions with you, because there were a lot of questions here today from our panelists and from the videos.
Hey, ladies.
The photo up.
How to bring Jola? Okay.
Okay, let's smile. Okay.
Jolly.
Yeah, okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Another one.
I can see two violets. Are they two violets here?
Yeah, by the steering. Sorry, a lot of people doesn't like to open their video. That's
So
okay.
she more.
Yeah,
herself.
that's their privacy. Okay. Okay, that's
Saludos
all.
desde Nicaragua. Bye bye.
Bye. That's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you. Great to
See
be
you.
here.
everyone.
Jola, can you handle it?
Thank you, IAWRT.
everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you, Ghanaian students.
Thank you.
Gracias, Asante.
Thank you.
Lion.
Thank you. Thank
Asante.
you very much. Thank you, Iowa.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Asante.
Hey, Jola. Hey, Jola. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Who is it?
It's
Noni.
Noni. It's Noni. How are you going?
Oh, hi. Yeah, it's very stressing webinar.
Hello, Noni.
Yeah, but I'm happy to do it, you know.
It went well. Recording now,
Jola, it
right?
went well.
Yeah, it's okay.
No, we're not
I have
recording. I hope.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
Oh.